Hello everyone. Oh crap, sorry. So I was talking for 15 minutes right now, outlining how how well everything is going now with my stream, and I didn't click go live. So thank you so much for waiting, and it was a good thing that after 15 friggin' minutes I finally decided to look at the chat. And yeah, hello everyone. Please write hello in the chat if you can see me now. So sorry for this whole thing going pretty much haywire. So first, a unicorn. If you recall our drinking game from last time, whenever I say unicorn, you have a sip of water, around 2 liters a day, just to stay hydrated. So unicorn and hydration is good for your body. Okay, so thank you so much. I can read some hellos there in the stream. This is excellent. So yeah, thank you for messing up the start of my stream. I always think that I got things down in terms of technical difficulties, and this is as soon as you get cocky and think, yeah, I know what to click, what to do, things that don't work out anymore. So my problem was first that I had the wrong YouTube stream key because I reset my computer and still had the old settings in OBS somewhere. Yeah, and then I started streaming. I saw a picture but didn't click the go live button and merrily streamed away for 15 minutes, pretty much into the void. And I thought, the chat is pretty silent today. Well, they must be engrossed in what I have to tell them. Okay, so let's start this again. Hello there, ladies, gentlemen, and unicorns. I welcome you to another stream of me talking about stuff. So I was in Graz, that's a city in Austria, so not that far away from where I am now. And they had the Game Dev Days 2019, so there we are. And this is a little conference in Graz that's hosted by a society or a club, I'm not quite sure. I think it's a Verein in German. And yeah, they host the Game Dev Days at the Technical University in Graz. It was the 4th time this year, and it was the first time that I attended. And without spoiling what this stream is going to be about, it was great. I really enjoyed it, and I thought I want to give you an overview of how things looked like, how everything was for me from a personal perspective, and just summarize each of the talks that I saw in just a couple of words. If you want to know more, Game Dev Days Graz has this YouTube channel, and they put up all their talks. It's like the GDC Vault, but you don't have to pay for anything, and you don't have to wait for random talks to get released on YouTube whenever they feel like it. No, everything, as soon as they have everything together, they will post it on their YouTube channel, and this is great. So if you find any of the topics that I'll be very badly summarizing, if you want to learn what I got wrong in my summary, yeah, you can just check out Game Dev Graz. That's Graz. That's the name of the town. I don't know how else to pronounce it. And you can go to their YouTube channel and yeah, have a look at the respective talks themselves. If you were lucky and already know about the Game Dev Days, you might even caught them on Twitch because they were live streamed to Twitch. And we got our first plane today. Well, the first one on stream, but before, yeah, never mind. Again, let's have a look at the channel, and yay, hello, hi, and hey, what's up? So it's great, people can still hear and see me. I'm really not good at streaming and going live, but but at least I'm somewhat live right now. Okay, so yeah, they had a great lineup of speakers. What I really liked about the talks is that there was a great variety. It was not very focused on programming or just focused on, I don't know, console development or mobile games. No, it was a nice bouquet of everything and even board games. Everything and even board games. You can quote me on that. Yeah, like I said, I want to just go through each of the talks and just a little bit of the environment there, and yeah, just hopefully pique your interest in all the great talks that have been going on. As you can see right now, it's from September 6th to 8th, and today here is still the 8th, but the last day was just a wine tasting tour through southern Austria, and I couldn't care less because I don't drink and already come from Graz. This is my hometown, and I've seen those beautiful rolling hills there. I think I've had my fill. Pun intended. Always, by the way, always intend your puns, you weaklings. Good, so I thought just let's have a look at the schedule, and then just go through with some little summary of each of the talks that I've seen and some surrounding notes and tidbits. So I also brought my camera, and I even brought my wife, who also brought a camera. So we recorded quite a lot. So first, this is the university, the Technical University of Graz, and it looks like your, well, should I say run-of-the-mill campus? Well, this is a little bit nasty. But yeah, it looks like you would expect a technical university to look, except the buildings where the venue was held, which looked, has this more Ostblock charm to it, a little bit Eastern Bloc. Ostblock is the German word for it. I went to the university of the Technical University myself. I think it was 15 years ago now. I didn't study there. I studied English, but on occasion I was just curious and checked out some of their lectures, like software development in C. And this is why I still knew my way around there. But of course, you don't have to know your way around there, because it was pretty straightforward where to find things. So it was on the upper floor of this great little building there, and let me just show you around. This is pretty much how it looked like there. It was just this big round walk there, and on the sides you had, of course, first the registration desk, then some sponsors who had their booths. Well, it's not quite a booth, it's more a desk. And as you can see here, it was a little bit cramped, but this was nice. It was literally rubbing shoulders with other game developers. And there were lots of games to play, and I even played some of them, which I will touch on a little bit later. So as you can see, it was a very friendly and nice atmosphere there. Okay, the lecture hall itself looked like, well, nothing special. It's just a lecture hall. But it was nice for me because it felt a little bit like going back to college, sitting there, taking notes. But the good thing about this is there was no test, no exam, and it didn't matter if you were sleeping for half of the time. But it did, because then you didn't understand anything that was going on. Okay, so the thing started off with, where do we have them? Yeah, this was the chair of the organizing staff, which did a great job of networking and getting all those great speakers together. So overall, yeah, it was a very well organized event. I've been to worse events when the beamer didn't start for an hour and the pipes were leaking and everything was horrible. So this was not the case. This was very well organized, everything quite smooth. The biggest issues that you have is people not showing up, speakers not showing up, and speakers don't considering other speakers after them, and they just, yeah, where one lecture spills over to the next, and in the end you have it's 3 hours too long. This didn't happen, luckily, and as you can see here, it started off with a little band, the Dev Tunes, and isn't this a great way of getting into the mood for some game dev talks? Just with a medley of one of the greatest game songs from each generation. I think it was more focused on retro games, but yeah, you can't go wrong with Zelda music and Final Fantasy battle themes and the others that I have already forgotten, but it was really great. This was very nice. So let's have a look at the chat to see whether I'm still online. And no pun intended, every now and then. There is no pun, of course. Yeah, this you should do this. This is nice. Say no pun intended after just a random sentence, and people the next minute people won't listen to you because they will go, I didn't get the pun. Where was the pun in there? What was said exactly? So yeah, I will steal this. This is great. So the first talk of the day was from Josh Sawyer, creative director, or yeah, studio design director, I'm sorry, at Obsidian Entertainment, and his talk was about death and the high cost of killing everyone. I found this very interesting because he was talking about how Obsidian goes about when designing open worlds where players could literally kill pretty much any NPC. And he stressed that, of course, first, well, maybe pick another still frame there because the one was not quite flattering. This one is better. But that your whole team has to buy in that it's possible that the player can kill theoretically any NPCs, because this has to start very early in the design, because once you in the middle of something and then you think, wouldn't it be neat if the player could kill anyone? Yeah, you pretty much have to redo everything. And of course, there are a lot of caveats that come with the player killing anyone and being able to kill anyone. And what I found the most funny thought was, as he said, as soon as the player has control over their character and direct line of sight to an NPC, you should consider this NPC killed and have the game deal with it. So pretty much you always have to deal, it's just a lot of work making your quests robust enough, or even the main story, that potentially everyone could be dead and the game still has to be either interesting, or you have to find a way to tell the player that they just messed things up for themselves. But ideally, in big open world RPGs, you want the player to have this freedom. And she just explained how Obsidian went around designing things like that, from Fallout New Vegas to Pillars of Eternity. And one solution was having more than one faction leader, where it's just the captain and then the first officer, for example, and never have those two people in the room at the same time. So if the player kills one, well, there still is the other to keep the faction leading. And otherwise, if you have a faction and the player killed all their leaders, then and the faction still exists in the game, it wouldn't gel, it wouldn't work. And the other thing is, which I found quite funny, is like I said, if the player has control over their character and direct line of sight, consider this NPC killed. So don't have the player control over the character, meaning use cutscenes, and as soon as the cutscene ends, have the player outside the building, I don't know, or have the antagonist behind a bulletproof glass, or just over CCTV, just anything that the player can just go over there and kill them dead. So I found this really interesting and really fun. It was a great talk. The next talk was by Pascal Luban, and I probably said his name wrong, but as we all know, with my track record, I always get people's names wrong, so I will apologize, but it won't change things. His talk was about player retention, and I think it was mostly in mobile games. Let's pick a better still frame, this one. Mostly in mobile games, and personally for me, it didn't clung with me, stuck with me. It didn't feel right, because I'm overly sensitive to any kind of exploitable game mechanics. I'm still this very idealist, hobbyist bedroom game developer, where I think I want to make games to make people happy, to make them inspired, to make their games their own, or just give them a great experience. And of course, as soon as you have to have a company, it's nothing wrong that you want to stay afloat financially and pay your bills by making things that you love. And at a certain point, things start, of course, once you have investors, you need to make money and so on and so on. And in the end, you design mobile games, and it's all about hooking players, keeping players playing those games. And he touched upon quite a few subjects of how to make this happen. Of course, at the end, you have to make a great game. And I found this quite insightful, because in his talk, I could identify one after the other all those hooks that games like Wizards Unite use to really draw you in. For one thing is, one example was that we, of course, as people, we love closure, to tick things off a list, to complete things, to make things whole again. And this is why you have so many bars where it says, if you just logged on tomorrow, you have this streak of 7 days logged on in a row, and then you get a little present. And of course, I like presents. I like ticking off boxes. So of course I will log on the next day. And yeah, if you played Wizards Unite, it's just a shitload of bars and things that you can fill up. And for me, I realized that at some point with Wizards Unite, for example, that there was not much game there. It was a lot of hooks just trying to keep you playing, but overall it was just stealing my time. So this is, but this is still an interesting talk if you're interested about all those ways that you can or people use on you. Conspiracy theory. Hashtag that people use to have to keep players playing their respective games. Okay, the next one was from the first day my favorite talk because it was just so darn applicable. It was from Ashley Gwinnell. I think I've seen one of two of his games somewhere pop up with Ludum Dare. And yeah, he's a game dev, and his talk was pretty great. First about what game feel is. I think many of us have read the book from Steve Swink. Side tangent there. I tried to read it on my Kindle, and I think after each paragraph or two paragraphs, it was, click this link and there you can play it, because of course it's game feel, you have to feel it. You have to feel stiff controls compared to others. And I was just there sitting on my Kindle and I couldn't try those out. So I thought at some point I just gave up because I couldn't do this. But yeah, game feel is, his talk was very concrete in terms of how you can make your game feel more interesting. If you have a jump and run, something's going on my phone, which I think is good or bad. Well, let's ignore it for now. So, about game feel, for example, like, oh cool, just got an email, thank you. To finish my sentence, a game feel about polish or just making the controls feel tight and all these ways of doing things. And if you just keep adding on those little things that you feel don't amount to much, like for example have a little bit of momentum even in stiff controls, just have them round off a little bit, or mind the controller dead zones for one thing, or squash and stretch on the animations or particles there, or how to make those little tricks of how to make particles not clump together and stuff like that. So I found this very interesting and very helpful for us indie devs trying to make their Ludum Dare games look really appealing. And since I'm all about polish, I found this very fun and interesting. Cool. I hope I'm not boring you with my bad summaries of all this, but you're stuck with me for today now, for this evening, for this stream at least. So cheers, and thank you so much for watching already. Let's have a look at the chat. Hello, friend Glue, or have guns jam randomly. Okay, I should follow the chat because I've realized that I just read the last line there and don't get what was being said and draw wrong conclusions and just keep rambling. That gets annoying at all every time you get an email. This is true, and I said I want this sound only once, no matter how many emails I get. Until I check them, it only makes that sound only once. So I hope. Yeah, I shouldn't check them because then it will make the notification again. So, okay, especially when your alarm is too according to... Yeah, it is my alarm, it is my email sound. It is, for those of you who are really curious, it is the sound of Tim Curry laughing as the clown in It. And I don't know why. I think it was a meme once, nor was it? I thought it funny, and now I'm used to it. And people are always creeped out when there's this horrible, dirty laugh coming out of my pockets. So this is why I stuck to it. Okay, so the next talk that I saw was Playing Politics, the XR Experience Vienna, all tomorrows. Interestingly, I have no recollection of this at all. To be frank, Did I see it? I'm not quite sure. Usually, I for each talk that I saw, I just made a little video clip, and for this, I don't think I found one. So I'm not quite sure if I just completely it went way above me, or that I didn't see it, or the schedule changed. This could also be. the ones and ohs of brand building. Oh, I think, yeah, this is, I recall those talks now. This was when my first camera battery ran out and I had the others not available. So yeah, this was also an interesting talk about how to build a brand, and essentially every one of us in one way or the other is a brand. And it was just the very basics of brand building, meaning you have to find what's unique about yourself, either about you as a person or your game company, and keep exploiting that. Well, exploiting sounds exploitative. Just keep focus on that and keep this on the table at all times. I think I'm not quite sure if those are the correct terms. Just to focus on what's special, what's unique about you, because we all know if there's one thing that looks like the other, it's hard to differentiate and you will have a harder time. And this is, I think this is why this channel is all about unicorns. So yeah, I'm the weird guy with unicorns. Then there was the coffee break. So again, I'm sorry that I can't apparently completely, I've missed one talk. It was the coffee break, and as you probably know me, it's great to have some coffee. The coffee was complimentary, which was great. You also had other drinks such as water and cola. So this was also different because from other conferences that I went to, they charge like double for the catering and the caterers themselves. So it happened to me that I paid, I think, €5 for really a small cup of watery coffee, and this was not it. It was, like I said, you almost felt like you were taking advantage of those poor people organizing this because they gave you so much. Okay, so after the coffee break, we went back and with the head evangelist of Unreal. And this talk was quite interesting in terms of the Unreal Engine. You don't quite know what it all can do, and not so much from only a game designer's perspective, but also in different industries. For example, for prototyping, for industrial products prototyping, as he mentioned, big car manufacturers were still using the process of making clay models. And of course, if you can visualize it as photorealistic as possible with the tools of Unreal, it saves you money, the iteration time is much faster, and so on. And what I found quite interesting is, of course, this blend with the whole movie and motion picture technology. I think there was this one GDC talk where they used the Unreal Engine just as a test for production for 1 or 2 shots to see if those shots rendered in real time with the Unreal 4 engine would play well with all those rendered images that come out of big render farms where it takes hours to render one frame, because we're pretty much in an age right now where photorealism with a real-time ray tracing is almost possible. So you don't have to cheat much anymore in real-time graphics as you had to do before. Just one thing. Ray tracing is now becoming a thing. It's still a little bit slow, but I recall when I started with 3D, which was, 20 years back, and the consensus was that only use ray tracing for reflections if you really have to. Don't use it for shadow, use Z-depth shadows because it's just overkill. It just takes hours to render, and nowadays pretty much everything that I do in 3D graphics when rendering offline is done with ray tracing. And this stuff is coming to real time, and it was quite interesting also in combination with photogrammetry, how much you get pictures to look really realistic. And then there's all this big can of worms with digital production. Digital production meaning in film production that you use more digital real-time tools. For example, like in virtual reality, you have viewfinders, you have virtual cameras that behave like real cameras with their real lenses and have all those properties that you can really interactively pick a shot and don't have to first draw storyboards. And from this on, you can say, let's hope later in CGI, those people there really may recreate this. If you we all know, the more interactivity you have, the more iteration you can pour into something, the better the result is. Yeah, this was pretty much just, I'm I'm overly exaggerating this, but it was a nice commercial for why not try the Unreal Engine? It looks really good and it can do more than you would think. And I'm still more of a Unity guy, because what's really for me throwing me off with Unreal is again the steep learning curve, and that I don't think that I can pull off C++ programming if I want to get something seriously done with Unreal. Of course, there's this whole blueprinting system, and maybe one day I will look into it, because I'm a sucker for great visuals, and I have a field day with photogrammetry personally right now, so there will be a video on photogrammetry sooner or later. I got another video currently in production about the sound effects of shoot 'em ups and how to do them yourself, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, the Austrian Dev Hours were more focused on what's going on in Austria, and what I found quite interesting was from Martin Philipp here, and also here the CEO of Bongfish, about the situation of game developers in Austria, how many of us there are, how big we are, how many we are, and just some statistical analysis. I think this was the first time that this study even got funded, so that we even know what the status quo is in Austria. And big surprise, we are few but well-educated people, and very small. We just got a very, very small amount of companies who can employ more than like 2 or 3 people to do and to live off making games. And I also took part in the study, but of course, since I'm not incorporated and I just put out one game in Steam, I don't think that my input was very contributing much to the study, but still it was nice to get a little bit of perspective of how things are in Austria right now. Preta says, I'm a Unity fanboy. Having 2 files for every script in C++ is too weird. Also, I saw that something with C# is coming out for Unreal. Oh, this is nice. Oh, this is great. So maybe, maybe I think I should click this one big button in the Epic launcher that says, try Unreal. Try Unreal. Yeah, the next talk was GDPR and legal discussion. And boy, don't we all love the GDPR. I already forgot what what the acronym stands for. The Global Data Protection. I think it says here, but I got the exposure wrong, so I don't know. This was a very fun talk about the misconceptions about when to disclose what kind of data you store or process about your players. And I read a lot into it, and literally read a lot into it, and I'm still not quite sure. But in the end, I think the main takeaways is don't ask for consent, because you don't need consent. This sounds wrong. Well, in a legal sense, it makes sense. And the other thing is that, as you probably don't know it, but in one way or the other, you're storing personal information about your players, be it an IP address, or as it is in my case with my game Finesweeper, I'm using the Steam ID, of course, to match players to the respective leaderboards. This is all handled via Steam, but still, in a sense, my software processes personal data, because from the Steam name you can find out who the person is, theoretically. So it's not completely anonymous, because otherwise leaderboards wouldn't work. And this was quite insightful about what a big clusterfudge this whole data protection law thingy is. Then we have the post-mortem, the Middle Ages, the development of the Guild 3. The Guild 3 is one of the longer standing series or franchises in Germany. I think it was also Austria, of course. It's a Euro game in a sense that you have this weird mix of strategizing, financial strategizing, economy, but also you have a guild that lives on for longer than a lifetime. So you also have this weird family tree that you want to keep your wealth, and and a lot of stuff like this. And with the Guild 3, they said they also had some kind of live simulation and real-time strategy, and it was a weird blend. And when they took over the project, they just told about their struggles that they had with very bad Steam reviews, and they also had to keep using the engine that it was built on, which was the engine of Darksiders 2, a third-person action game, and then it's a strategy, top-down strategy game. Yeah, it was a lot of work, and they managed to get out of the slump and increase the user reviews by just being on top of everything and trying to turn the tables on the community, which of course, as soon as your game that doesn't run well and is not fun to play, players will turn on you on Steam. But if you're really attentive and show the people that you're listening, that you're working what you can in, but that you have to manage expectations, that you don't promise anything to them. Yeah, this is how you can change the perception of players of you and get better Steam reviews. And I think this was the last talk of that day, because then it was Martin Eder from Bongfish talked about the art of the world of tanks. And this is when my body tanked also. Like I said, I didn't sleep much. Usually I go to bed at around 6 in the morning, and yeah, this thing started at 12, and we had to drive 3 hours from Salzburg there, and also to register and find a parking space. Yeah, thing is, I slept 2 hours that night, and not consecutively. So I was pretty I was pretty tired and exhausted. So this is why I couldn't stay any longer, and we just drove home, and pretty much just tipped over and slept for a couple of hours, and then I was wide awake again, because my body was still in the phase of, oh, if you go to sleep before midnight, you're probably taking a nap, right? You mean to take a nap. No need to sleep for 8 hours. Just after 1.5 hours, I wake up again, and then make you all motivated to do something creative. And this is what happened. And I managed to fall asleep. But for the second day, I still didn't sleep longer than 4. I think it was 5 hours. So with that piece of advice. No, my English is all wrong. Sorry. With that piece of information, let's go with that. Let's go with piece of information. We enter the second day, the Saturday, the 7th of September. And first, unicorn, be sure to drink your water. Okay, there's a message being held for review. Oh, GDPR sucks. Well, okay, I think I can allow this comment. This is nice when you're streaming and you're also moderating your own chat while you're streaming. Man, I'm just so lucky that I'm a very small fish, small-time YouTuber, that I can do everything and even mess up my own stream in terms of technical issues. So again, sorry for the late starting date. Okay, the next day started at 10 in the morning, so I just had to have some kind of breakfast and get it in there and be ready for some more game dev or talks about game dev. And here's a pan of the venue again, not edited at all, of the second day. And of course it's Saturday, and there's a lot fewer people than the days before, because I thought, oh my god, we really should be there on time, just don't be late, because there will probably be much more people, because it's Saturday and everyone who might be at a job at Friday will be there on Saturday. Luckily it wasn't the case, and I still got the pole position in the lecture hall. And the first talk of the day was the keynote by Noah Falstein, an industry legend from LucasArts. I think the first game that he made was Sinistar, an arcade game for Williams. It was this big, kind of Death Star, and whose construction you have to avoid, and he keeps taunting you with voice samples and so on. Oh yeah, there is the icon. And he also worked on the Indiana Jones LucasArts games, and has since then shifted his focus more towards virtual reality and medicine. And his talk was about what it was a good keynote in a sense that it wasn't as specific, more like giving you a perspective into the future of what game dev can be. For example, with virtual reality in movies, how this additional level of the audience being there can change films. Right now, it's just we're watching films and we know, yeah, it's an edit, it's a close-up, but with virtual reality, you are in there, and with also with games, the characters can react to the player there. And he noted some examples where this worked and where this didn't work, and just gave a perspective of where things are going. And also, of course, how game development and medicine, which sounds like two completely disparate pieces, can work together, or what game development can do for medicine. For example, training surgeons, but also pain relief, or even training people after accidents to use parts of their brain again. Because, like you said, it's more fun if you have a game where you have to steer a plane by moving your arms up and down, instead of just the doctor going, yeah, move your arm up and down for the next half an hour, because you probably won't be doing this. So yeah, there's a lot that game developers in medicine can work together to just make people healthier, or get them back to health. And also the use of painkillers and sedatives is diminished by, yeah, just in the sense distracting people by playing games, but also nurturing their reconvalescence. Is this an English word? When people are sick and they get back to being healthy. This is what I meant. Yeah, this was a great, very inspiring talk, and afterwards you fired up and you think like, you can take on the world. Yeah. And the next one was where we are. Interactive streaming and the future of esports. Yeah, this talk was about the interactive world of streaming. No, it was more about how, as a game designer, you if you want to create, in a sense, an esport, or how to make your game esport ready, that for one thing you should not only design for the players, but also for any potential spectators. For example, if you have a game that is very engrossing for the players, but as a spectator you can't just pop in and watch for a couple of minutes like you would with a sports game in the evening, and didn't get anything there because you had to been there from the start of the competition. It's not interesting sport for spectators. At the same thing, you don't want to create a game where a round takes like 30 minutes, but after 5 minutes it's pretty much decided who wins or who loses, and the rest is just wrapping up like a game of Monopoly. And also how players, or not players, how the audience, the spectators, can somehow influence the outcome. And I think this was a quite slippery slope for me, or rather a thin ice, because as soon as you he mentioned an example is like, if you could pay, and then you cheer on your favorite players, and those players would hear you cheering the loudest. For example, those people who pay the most would cheer the loudest. And the first thing that I thought about is, oh man, this doesn't work for esports, because then you're tipping the scales, right? The first thing that I thought was, yeah, then I would pay a lot of money to cheer for the other player that I don't want to win, so they don't hear the footsteps of the other players in a Counter-Strike match, for example. So yeah, for me, I think there is a lot of interesting food for thought in there of how to involve the audience in esports. But like I said, for me it was just, I don't know, maybe I'm a prankster, but I only could think about ways to exploit this as soon as you give the audience some way to influence the outcome. One thing that he cited was this game where an island, and you have a couple of NPCs there, and it's just an AI, it's not real players, and those NPCs just try to survive each on their own. It's like a Hunger Games, and you as a spectator can influence, maybe give some care packets, have them drop in the middle of the map, and see or how to help your favorite player AI to win the game. I think this could be more interesting, but again, with this monetization thing, yeah, I'm not quite sold on it. Haha, pun intended. Exploiting rules is always the best. I think this is in games in general. As soon as you've mastered a game with the rules, and you start thinking about the meta games of how you can exploit this or how you want the AI to behave, that you can even get more out of the game just for your own amusement. And sometimes, just coming to think of it, sometimes you really have to play the meta game of trying to find out how the AI works when you've managed yourself into a horrible position on the playing field. For example, I don't know which game it was, but I was stuck somewhere in the scenery and I just kept lobbing grenades and draw the attention of a guard to come closer and shoot me, so that I didn't have to restart the mission completely from the beginning, but only from the spot where I was. But I couldn't get out of the scenery and even couldn't kill myself. Yeah, I was in a strange place of limbo, and I just had to play the meta game of trying to help the game get myself back on track. The next talk, where are we? Sorry. Oh yes, the Abstraction Trap. The next one, the lightning talks session. It was just a couple of very short talks in short succession that were supposed to hit you like lightning. The first one here was about board games, which I thought was quite interesting, because as game developers, most of us, at least for me, I tend to think in computer game terms. And with board games, there also is a lot to be learned, because right now there's a lot going on with board games. And he talked about how board games have used their playing field as representation, as helping players teach the rules. Because I think many of us have played some games from the 80s or early 90s, board games, I mean, where it was just this huge booklet of the rules explained, and of course you always had to have it open and reference the rules, and you had very nice pieces but didn't quite understand them. And then with a rise of the German board games or Euro games, for example, the Settlers of Catan, where it was more that the playing field themselves dictated or already helped you, that you would intuitively know where to place pieces, or some kind of reference cards, where once you place a resource there, the resource itself would tell you what to do. So in a sense, he was talking about that you hide this great complexity from the player, that exposing only what is necessary or interesting or valid at a certain point at once. And of course, with computer games, it's quite easy. It's not trivial, right? But it's easier to hide information that the player doesn't need. With board games, you pretty much have everything there laid out on the field. And I think this is quite interesting, because there already developed in the past 10-15 years a meta language of board games, where you just look at a board and see all those symbols for resources. For example, or times 2 if swords equal 14 or something. As board gamers, it's like a grammar, it's like a language, a visual language that you learn. And sometimes you have to be, of course, on the lookout that it's not too much information presented at once. And I thought this is really interesting, this look towards board games. Next up was reverse engineering. Where did we go? Board games here. Reverse engineering. This was interesting, because sorry, I'm just trying to get my bearings there. Yeah, this was about reverse engineering System Shock 2 levels, and I found this very interesting. Like any talk, I'm repeating myself. Every talk was very interesting, actually, to me. And it was about how you go about reverse engineering, in this case, the levels resources and the whole game resources, not with the intention to rebuild another engine that makes System Shock possible, because there already is an engine that reads System Shock files. But in the end, just how to make it moddable, how to expand upon it. And reverse engineering, in a sense, in a nutshell, it is just like trying to work out the compression or how files are compressed, and then writing a program that decompresses everything, recompresses it without any changes, and puts it into the game and see if the game loads it. If not, rinse and repeat until you get it working. And once you got it working, you start changing certain bits or bytes rather, and see how the changes are in the game. And so gradually you keep working out what byte at what location does something. And his breakthrough was that he touched upon those trigger objects. And before that you only had levels you could walk through, but they were just like stages on the theater stage. You just walked through, but nothing did happen. Because it is important for that game. He mentioned it like pulling back the curtain and seeing the man behind the curtain who's pulling the strings. That once you figured this out, that you had these trigger objects that you could see, this trigger object, once you interact with it, that unlocks a door there, and once you use this door, something in your inventory gets unlocked, and so on. And at that point you really have a game. And his takeaway was always document your data files, because it will be much easier for people in the future to reverse engineer and keep adding onto your game. So it's not so much that you want to keep your creation safe from anyone, any prying hands, but instead you want to open it up to just hackers interested in fiddling around with the systems and expanding upon it and making cool stuff with it. And then we have Dietmar Hauser, and what was it? Oh, the Abstraction Trap, where he was talking about that where abstraction always happen, and that of course pretty much everything is abstract in as soon as we get to a level with higher concepts. And the funny thing is that I'm trying to recall his talk. I don't know his takeaway, so have a look at this his talk. He even had a visual pun, and it was very funny because it was just so corny. It just escapes me, but abstraction is good or bad or something else, I don't recall. Sorry. And then we had a talk from this guy whose name is probably somewhere in here. So sorry. I think it was Christian Haas. And his talk was about lore and how important lore is for a game, but not only for the game itself, but also for you as a game developer. Because if you really have this joy and fun working out the lore behind something, it's what motivates you. At some point, some designers are more technical. For them, it's more the game systems and how they interact with each other. But if it's orcs slaying elves or blue circles slaying red squares, it doesn't matter because it's the mechanic. But as soon as you have a lore, things can start just being fleshed out more or less by themselves, by their backgrounds. Because as soon as you have a lore background on something, it can bleed into the mechanics in a way that, for example, if your lore is that this one race has a long history of being archers, of course they are better with bows, for example, and you can work this in. Of course, it also can go the other way around, that your mechanics influence and just dictate where your lore is going. And for him personally, he was working on this big project, and at many times he said he just can't look at statistics tables anymore. He just can't take it and he has to leave it be. But then it was the lore he constructed, all those the big evocative world that pulled him back in and really got him motivated. Because in the end, I think we as indie game devs, some of us are more into the experience we want to give players, others more with the mechanics. But as soon as you can blend things together and have one influence the other, I think it's more than the sum of pieces that comes out. And it's not me, it was his talk that draw those conclusions. So lore is good unless your data. And this was Star Trek The Next Generation pun there, and I apologize. And then we have here a talk from Phil Gosch about augmented reality and augmented reality frameworks. And his company Codeflügel also made a framework that worked with, I think, was it Unreal or Unity? And yet just the gist was to have the right framework, to pick the right framework for the right project that you want to have. And of course that you not only have to think about what the framework offers, but of course how well you can work with it, how well the devices can work with it, and that you really start trying to just weigh the options of which framework to use for which task you want to get across. I think this was the gist of it. I think I went out to use the washing rooms, so I'm not quite sure if this was the point he made. My point is, as soon as it's up, check out his talk, because augmented reality, I think this is just the sweet spot between being completely immersed in VR, but of course it's not so much anti-social, but I always find it weird that you have to completely shut you off from any surroundings to be in this world. And with AR, I think it's more of a collaborative experience, like with 3 people on a board game and each one with their phone and seeing something there in AR. I think this is more a social experience in my personal opinion. And this was the last talk, I think, was about focus groups and how you can use, or the ups and downs of working with focus groups when you want to test your game. In his case, it was a focus group, or he identified certain people or personalities that you have in focus groups. For one thing, it's good to have the right focus group for your target audience, of course. The other thing is that is crucial is to have a moderator that is versed enough to, for one thing, to drive the discussion, or to get a baseline that everyone is talking about the same things. Otherwise, the results you get out of your focus groups probably won't help you much if everyone is talking or having a different underlying concept of your game. And of course, the other thing is that your moderator has to realize it when the discussion goes completely off the script, but still is beneficiary to your bigger games or your bigger questions you want to have answered from your design. And of course, with focus groups, there are always different personalities. There are some people who want to take over the group, other people who are quite timid and don't say anything, but also probably have valuable input. And in the end, I think the gist was that focus groups, of course, can improve your game's design and shouldn't be overlooked, that you really have a dedicated focus group for what you're going to develop. And it's not just QA who tries to find out all the bugs. Because especially if you're developing for a certain group, for example, seniors or children, it's just crucial to have those people constantly play your games, that you can iterate it and make it better for their needs and purposes. And then it was coffee break, or lunch break rather. And the lunch break was the time when I thought for myself, well, I had breakfast before, I'm still not hungry. Let's play all the games that there are. And I was already, after the first game, I already was kind of tired. And the downside was that, of course, it's lunch break. And even the people exhibiting their games are probably out to lunch. Not all of them, but so I managed to play a couple of games. So let me show you. Oh, of course, first let's have a look at the chat and see how many of you I've already lost. Actually, asked if they had problems that this stream interactivity would be exploited, but he was like, no. Oh yes, I recall that question. He was like, yeah, probably not. You have to make safeguards for it, but he was a little bit vague on this. Everyone wants money. I think exploiting children should be illegal. Yeah, this is true. I mean, it's one thing, as always, I think it's good if you have a product that you believe is the best product you can make, and also people think they're not being taken advantage of. This is the product that they want, they pay for it, and everything is good. As soon as you start trying to trick people into doing something that they wouldn't do otherwise, this is where for me it starts. Like I said, with gambling mechanics, tricking people, or especially children or other groups that are very vulnerable to certain kinds of psychological manipulation, whatever it may be in whatever industry. Yeah, I think it's just shitty, and it's not it's not healthy in the long term for you as a company, for you as a person. I think if I'm like I said, I'm this idealist. I think everyone should be happy, and it's just a collaboration between people. It's a respectful exchange between two people, and what's wrong with that? Sounds like the coffee there was defective. Yeah, I probably didn't drink as much coffee as I could have drunken, because, like I said, I wasn't paying for it, and yeah, I always felt bad if I have to accept something, because they, like I said, they put so much effort into organizing this whole thing, and everything was free there, and there was even cake. So yeah, I didn't drink as much as I could have. Yeah, basically poison is good or bad, I can't remember. Just taste it and you will find out. Great advice, Phil. Oh, damn it, did I say this? You can quote me on this and put it on your prescriptions everywhere. It's just try it and find out. Lore is good unless it is too abstract. Yeah, with lore in some games, for myself, I played Pillars of Eternity 1. I think, I'm not quite sure if I backed it, but as soon as it came out, I tried it, and the lore for myself was just too dense. It was just a bunch of names and nouns that I didn't know what they meant, and I also never quite felt comfortable with this possible real-time battle system. It was, everything just went into a big ball, and I didn't know what was going on. So yeah, and this is, I think, also with this lore background, I never felt that I could get to the soul of the game. It was always like, okay, I need I need to take notes and then study them and reference them with the wiki. So it was more like studying. And if the game mechanics, the core loop itself for me is not as inviting, also I give up. So yeah, definitely too much lore also can weigh your game down. Not Lost talk sounded very neat. Great. Yeah, like I said, I just want to spread the word about this little conference, because I think it has quite places to go. So yeah, this is me playing a game, and in this video clip here, you can see that I'm figuring out stuff, which wasn't always the case there. Yeah, you can see in this room here, I tried to. I can see now that I'm watching the video what the game designers are telling me. Just watch this. Here, this one block falls down. And their intention probably was that I should pick up this crate, because this passage there is blocked. So pick up the crate and throw it against this thing here. What I did was, for like 2 minutes, I just tried to throw the crate against those planks covering the opening, and I thought, I don't know, I quite don't understand what is going wrong. So I played only the tutorial level, and I didn't get very far with it. And but I think it felt a little bit like Portal, but as always, not quite, and I couldn't quite put it into words why it felt a little bit strange. But I think this is great when you have games played by so many people in exhibitions like this. You get a lot of different perspectives on your design you thought is pretty presentable or pretty finished in a sense. And for me, since I don't think that I'm the brightest player, the learning curve of the tutorial was a little bit too fast for me. Probably it was also because it was just the public demo version, and you really want to get things across of how many things your game can do. But for me it was just too much, and in the end I struggled and needed the help of the developers to guide me through. And I got this video, which was quite interesting here. This is where after I was stuck, and here you can see the developers just talking about, oh my god, he doesn't get it, oh my god, he tried to do this, and then they started, of course, a discussion of how to design things differently, I think. So I'm sorry if I made your game look to be way too hard. It was just for me. And the other game that I played, I'm not Blade, I played this one here, is very beautiful. This is Chemo No Heroes, and it's let me show you one where you can see more. It looks like this. You play this little fox character, and it's all apparently all set in Japanese fantasy world or something, and it looks like a very, very polished 16-bit platformer. And yeah, I'm struggling here because it took me quite a while to understand that I could just repeatedly tap the button to attack, because I thought, yeah, it probably has some kind of cooldown. The sad thing is that I didn't have a developer to speak to, because, like I said, it looks really amazing. But at the same time, personally, I've played way too many pixely platformers, and despite this one looking very great, for myself, it didn't offer anything. Or this is why, again, it's sad that I didn't see the developer there, because it probably would have told me, hey, just hit this button and there's this whole new mechanic that you didn't try out. So from what I saw, it was just a very well polished platformer, and I think I've played my fill of them. I've had my fill of those, but yeah, it just looked so great. And even I didn't hear much of the noise, but the sound, also the music also was very appealing. But again, it's nothing wrong with just taking what's there and really polishing it to a shine, because most of the time I think history is a little bit too harsh on games that just excel at what is there if you don't invent the wheel again and utterly fail. For example, I just recall John Romero's Daikatana, which took way too long to develop, and in the end, of course, it couldn't just live up to all those expectations, and it is regarded as this kind of failure, but still with this great good core in there. And then there are games like, see, I can't come up with a game that are really competent games. There is nothing wrong with them. The only thing that is wrong with them is that they didn't do anything that was new at the time. But still, it was just the best amalgamation of all the mechanics that were in this genre at that time, and you don't quite remember them. But yeah, sometimes history is sad. Then, of course, there we go. There was also a mobile game, and it was this one here. I'm not quite sure if I'm talking over it in this one. And yeah, this was reminded me a lot of Camel Try on the Super Nintendo. And there was also a tablet version. And the developer of this one just had two of their friends sitting and just watching over their booth. But he was not present, which was sad, because I wanted to ask him if there are different settings of how you have to swipe to turn the device, because on the tablet you just make one swipe across and you could turn it the whole playing field by 360 degrees almost. So of course it was much easier playing it on a big screen, and I was just curious if it would be possible to speed up the sensitivity and the frame rate, because it looked, I mean, in this recording, it looks like looks okay, but I think it was not much more than 30 FPS. And yeah, considering that this is a mobile game, of course this is good. But for myself, it was a little bit too slow. So, but again, I really like this simple kind of game. It works perfectly on mobile, because on mobile you always have to ask yourself, what game can you play just a couple of minutes while you're on the subway, or a couple of hours if you really want to get further with it. So it's an interesting design challenge. And then of course we had this thing here. This was coffee. And as always, did I say something there?
Programming fuel.
I think I said programming fuel. I'm not quite sure if you hear it or not. Like I said, I'm not, as always with my stream, I'm not quite sure if you can hear me, you can hear the games that's being played or the video that's being shown. So I think I said programming fuel. Just wanted to throw this in there. And I think the last game that I played in this lunch break was Project Override. It's where you play this little robot. It's a let me turn this down again. It's a roguelike. I've been told, and the thing is that you collect different chips from chips with personality, where a whole person uploaded their character and personality, as I think I'm getting this right, and you can always choose, yeah, should you use it or shouldn't you use it, and each has a little story. And yeah, I think this thing is coming out on the Switch, and I've played also a lot of Metroidvania games, but this one felt very intuitive. With many games, for example, this is Chemo No Heroes before, I couldn't put it into words, but the jump felt off, and this one felt right. Again, coming back to Ashley's talk, it's all about the game feel. It's all those little things that once you pick up a controller and it either feels right or not. And this definitely did. One thing, probably because I played way too much Castlevania before, is that I wanted to duck. But so far, the level that they showed looked very polished and very finished, and they even have a mailing list, and this is intended to come out on the PC and I think also on the Switch. And again, nice Metroidvania for the go, where you can just jump back in or not. For a couple of minutes you can jump back in or not. With any game you can play it or not. What my point is, you can jump in and play it for a couple of minutes or longer if you want to. And I think again on the Switch this one works great. We could hear just a bit quiet. Okay, good. Thank you for clarifying it up on the stream. This is why I always have to keep checking the chat that I know that I'm not completely covering up the screen with something that's not relevant. So let me just check. Yeah, I'm still in the little corner there, and everything else is happening there or there. I'm not sure if this is mirrored. Oh God. Okay, and this was lunch break, which was way too short to play all the games. And oh yeah, this was one guy I saw repeatedly there. I didn't talk to him, but look at this great shirt. Look at this great shirt. It says designed by Bitmap Brothers. And I don't know the game. Is this the Chaos Engine or Speedball? What's it called? I don't know, but I love this shirt. With me, as soon as you have a nerdy shirt, I will probably comment on it, and then we'll steal it. We'll steal the idea. Okay, so after lunch break, we had Ivan Buchta from Bohemia Interactive, and probably with a differently pronounced last name. And he was talking about living in Livonia. Was it Livonia? Livonia, yes. He was the lead creative map designer, or he just had the lead over the complete design of the Arma 3 map, Livonia, which was also based on a real location. And he just talked about, the different ways of how to design such a huge map when you start with something that's realistic, and also how to coordinate teams that are tasked with creating different environments. And just how to keep things coherent, but at the same time plausible and authentic feeling. And I don't know if you have played any of the Flashpoint games or even DayZ, which uses the map of Chernarus, which is feels also similar. The thing is, because it's this middle European landscape there with those rolling hills and everything, for myself it felt like the most realistic landscape that I have from my own experience from just the landscape around here, ever since until Kingdom Come Deliverance comes along, which is also set in Bohemia. And of course also the hills and how the forests look. It looks just like a Middle European forest, like the ones that I used to walk in with my grandfather, and this is instant nostalgia if you can tap into something players are familiar with. So this was really an interesting talk of how to make such a big map and how to work things out. The next talk was from Yevgeny Buzankov, and this talk was so interesting at one point and so completely over my head in another point, because he was talking really fast and also said the groundworks or just definitions of certain terms from Russian literature, and I think even Russian cinema language. I think it was a mix between a fable and a sujet, and I was just I just couldn't follow it. And when you as soon as this goes up, I urge you to watch his talk, because you think, oh my god, I know exactly what you're talking about and how this in this game works. And as soon as it's over, it was just poof. this was really bad because, like I said, I found it very interesting, but completely nothing that I felt that I could put into concrete terms that would help me with my game dev or my storytelling or anything. And yeah, as soon as this talk goes up, I probably have to watch it, but at half the speed, because man, this guy was really going fast. And I know myself talking very fast, and I realized why. Because usually I'm just listening to podcasts at twice the speed, because I think, get on with it. And yeah, if you keep on a long journey and you just watch or listen to a podcast on double speed or 2.5 speed for 3 hours, you get out of the car and you talk like this. And don't ask me how I sound if I had coffee after this. Okay, then narrative without writing, still alive. Oh yes, using cities skylines as a level design tool. Oh, this was also an interesting talk. Because Still Alive Studios, they are making the bus simulator games. And of course, with the bus simulator, you have to have a city. And he talked about how he used Cities Skyline essentially as a level editor. And the drawbacks and also pros of this. For one thing, it's you have to get a bunch of mods first that you are able to create the right kind of city that you want. And he started, in essential terms, he started laying out the roads, because of course, if you have those big crossings of highways, if you don't start with the roads, you have to bulldoze big portions of your cities just to get those turnovers possible. So this is why you start with that. And then I think his process was he started with just a very crude sketch on paper. I think it was just even in this size on a sticky note. And from then on, he went straight into city skylines and just toyed around with the road layout, and then just kept filling in first the main roads, then the smaller roads and the smallest roads. But of course, it depends on your game. He already knew that in the version in the past years, a bus simulator that they made in the previous game, that the blocks were too big or too small, and you had too many intersections with traffic lights. And of course, it's not fun if you have to stop at each intersection and traffic light when you're playing a bus simulator, because you want to drive and not to wait for the signal to go green. And yeah, and the lots consideration like this, for example, because each in the end the game, each intersection had to be built manually. You don't want to have too many different kinds of intersections, and so on and so forth. And yeah, the other big problem is how to get this out of city skylines. There was one tool where you could get out the height field, but at a very bad resolution. It was like this 8 by 8 kilometer city, and you get it out as a 1K, 1024 by 1024 pixels height map, which is insufficient. And with the roads, he said, the only way you can get out the layout of the city is, of course, just taking a screenshot, a big screenshot of everything, and then just rebuilding everything from scratch. But still, he said it was worth it, because, of course, when you have the level done and finished in City Skylines, it helped the publisher really sign off on pretty much the idea. And in the end, you just have to recreate everything. Of course, but at the same time, in cities, in your level editor, you can already go down on street level and just check out the surroundings, your landmarks, and just how everything will look like in the final game, which I think is quite creative. It's like, I think many of us are using text editors or even Microsoft Excel as there's a level editor where it just plays X's and O's and then load it into the game, and ta-da, there is your level. So I think I like this kind of, in a sense, of kit bashing, of using disparate parts of software to do something that they probably were never intended to. Then we have City Skylines, a game as a form of protest. Oh yes, this was very cool. She was the designer of the game that was also showcased there, which I unfortunately didn't play, which was called Fantastic Fetus. And in the end, you had your pregnant woman there as somewhat Tamagotchi. We had just made sure that that she ate well, that she slept well, and when she was sleeping at night, you could pick one trait for your fetus, and you could make it really fantastic and super, and gave them superpowers. And in the end, there won't be a fetus, there won't be a baby for one reason or the other. And this was actually the intention, that you really grow attached to this baby, and then it's gone. And this was to spread awareness for the very strict laws on abortions in Poland. And again, just to spread awareness and to facilitate some kind of political change and get people into the right mindset. It's not just women in Poland, because they are aware of this, but it's more globally of how to think about this. And I think what is really interesting is this is a showcase example of using game mechanics to get people into a right way of feeling certain things. There's always this talk about how to convey loss while video games. You have this one companion that keeps giving you health bottles, and then she's dead and there's nothing you can do about it, and now the player will feel loss. Does it work? Not quite. And with this one here, it's never was stating outright that it's about abortion laws, but instead it was more about making you feel attached to something, and then it's lost. And it was it's not so much that you can choose your abortions, but it's I think the topic was about that there, if the fetus has some kind of really horrible disease, you still have to go through in Poland, and then of course the psychological damage to you will be much worse than if you were allowed to abort. I think this was the gist of it, and I really think that it's so interesting of how you can make game mechanics and to use as a political I want to say tool, but it's not a political tool. It's more like a way of thinking about stuff, of approaching a difficult subject from a complete different angle, and get players into a certain emotional state when they think about it. Because with other people, when you say just the word abortion, they just completely shut off. So I think this was very valuable and interesting. And also a thing that was next, games as a form of protest. Yes, the next one. If you've seen, just show you again those nice little pixel fetuses. Where is it? Okay, pixel art. The next talk was from the guy who made this pixel art, and it was Thomas Feichtmeier. And you probably, if you're on Twitter, you probably have seen his work sooner or later pop up on your timeline. Even if you don't follow him, someone will probably have retweeted it, because he's just really great at what he does. And do we have some pixels here from him, or did I just keep the camera on him? Pixel art. His talk was titled what was it? Pixel art basics. And if you were looking for this as to how to perfectly anti-alias a line, or how to draw a pixel art circle, that was not your talk. I think it was a little bit too broad. But at the same time, probably because I do pixel art for years myself now, and I probably know already a lot of things. But of course is pixel art, or what defines pixel art? And his definition was pixel art is an art movement of the 21st century, because everyone has their different opinion of what pixel art is. And one also important thing is that pixel art is not a filter. Because I think we've all seen people who just downscaled some art, posterized it, or just limited the colors to like 4 and said, ta-da, I'm a pixel artist. And of course, this is not real pixel art. It's just, just lazy. If anyone is curious about my definition of pixel art that I've come up with for myself, is pixel art is an art form where you place every pixel by hand, or well, not every pixel by hand, but the placement of every pixel is considered. It's not that you draw with a digital brush and it just makes 100,000 pixels of green and then you paint over in a different direction, and where those pixels are actually sit doesn't matter. But with pixel art, it's you have to consider the perfect placement of each pixel, and if you just move it around, it doesn't work anymore, or leads to a different outcome. So yeah, his talk was about the different forms of pixel art and what differentiates pixel art from other art, and the misconceptions some people still have about what constitutes pixel art and where the actual art is, and of course also where pixel art is better suited to what projects and where you should go with traditional art. For example, if you want to go more into a photorealism, of course you want to stay away from pixel art, because with pixel art you have to leave out certain stuff or certain details, of course, because space is limited, and he said it's a very technical form of drawing. You can't just draw an arc. You really have to pixel it, and then it's really hard to convey that this should be round, for example. But at the other hand, it's very well suited for animation. He said it's even better for traditional frame-based animation than 2D drawings, because every pixel counts, and you have to be much more expressive the smaller you go to make things, to keep things legible in a sense. So this was very interesting. And Ord Mortem. This was also fun. There we go. This was a post-mortem of the game Ord, which is, you can see it here, it just says alarm, wake, or quest. And you just pick wake or quest. Or I think this was alarm, I think it was alarms and snooze, or wake up. And in a sense, it was a text adventure for people who don't like to read. It's just one word prompt and 2 words you could decide where to advance the story. And they thought, yeah, it's just a very small and simple game, and they just do it in a couple of weeks or even a one weekend, and yeah, just keep it simple. And even with this very simple premise, for some reason it started getting bigger, and then of course you have certain areas, for example the forest, and then you have of course to have an exit card where you leave one area and go to the next, but you have to also curate this, because sometimes there were like 50 events in the forest, and then with the next round you draw the exit card like as your second card, and then you're not, and so on and so forth. And yeah, as for a post-mortem, it's always interesting to see your initial vision and how it completely can turn the more you work on it, and yeah, how it just explodes. So his talk was very interesting and very funny, and yeah, I think this was the first concept of the game that he shows there. So it's very, very interesting. Okay, then there was the coffee break to play all the fantastic games, and another great thing about this is look at this. There was cake. This was not cake that was ordered from some kind of catering company. No, the organizers they made it themselves. I think the guy who took pictures during the event, and also a lot of videos, which with better equipment than mine, and he stayed up all night to make all the cake, and it was delicious cake. So hashtag the cake was no lie. This was this was just amazing. So afterwards, there was the talk about AI, and this was for a little game. This was, I think it was for a broadcasting station. They had this little animated game or animated series, and they wanted a game, essentially saying they want Diablo, right, as a mobile game. But the company was just 4 or 5 people. So how do you pull this off? And yeah, he said it was pretty much an exercise in procedural generation to generate quests, and the thing was, of course, the quests don't fit sometimes quite with the player's expectation or their level or their ability. Some players are more skilled than others, and so on. And he started researching into machine learning, in a sense, and in a recommendation system, so that you have certain points, how long it took the player to finish a certain quest, of their health that they had at the end, of how many enemies they killed, and so on, and took all those parameters to generate new quests that players would have more fun, essentially, with the next quest that they could choose, and it wouldn't be as random as a procedurally generated thing. And on his talk, he even has his website and the publication where he outlines the implementation, but he said, yeah, of course, this is the only way to make something even as close as possible to having a fully curated Diablo-like experience by being just a couple of people and not all of them even programmers. So this is where machine learning really helps you take off the burden of having to handcraft all your content. And yeah, with procedural generation, we know that sometimes the results can be erratic or completely not fitting, but in combination with a recommendation system, he made some A/B testing, and it shows that the players, I think, now here's the dirty word, retention rate was better after a couple of days than with just the procedurally generated stuff. Okay, and then we had the We Love Audio session, and I've been talking to, again, I thought I will be talking only for 20 minutes and keep it short, but with all the technical difficulties, so here we are at the next one. So this one here was dynamic use of music in video games and seamless integration from the audio production software to middleware. Was this talk? Because I don't remember it being this verbose. Essentially, he was talking about, as a composer, how you need or what kind of information you need when someone says, hey, you can make the music for my game, and you say, sure. They say, cool, send me something by next week. Yeah, that you need, okay, does it from a technical standpoint here, do you want it to loop? Is it more of an audio canvas? Is it a soundtrack or just a song that keeps looping? What's your middleware? Do you use Wise? Do you have other means of integration? Do you use the mixer in Unity? And all this the composer needs to know to make, of course, the best, to deliver you the best result of their work. Because sometimes it's, if you compose something and then it says, yeah, it has to be loopable. Well, of course, yeah, then you make it loopable. But in the end, you see that someone just chops up your work to make it a reactive soundtrack. And of course, if you know this in advance and also have the tools in advance, as always, the more communication you have and the earlier you bring on your composers or your audio guys and girls, the result will always be better. So plan for audio, because as we all know, you have this great level and it feels nice, and then, oh, right, I need sound effects. All right, and probably want music. And this is the last step. And if you involve audio people from the start, they can bring themselves in and probably have some ideas and ways of solving stuff that you never dreamed of. The next one was from Adam Sporka, I think. Again, I'm mispronouncing his name. And he was the audio, not engineer, but creative audio director on Kingdom Come Deliverance. And he talked about the different structure, the different hierarchy of which music should play when, and of course the transitions between different music tracks. For example, when you are in a tavern in the game, the tavern music plays, and then suddenly you start picking a fight. Well, the tavern music should blend very well, transition over into the fighting music, and then the fight keeps going on outside the tavern, and then the fight is over, but it is outside, and maybe it is nighttime, so then the music has to have a resolution, a transition to the night theme of the town, which is probably much slower and not as agitated. And everything, all those transitions should work ideally. It depends, of course, on your game, but if you set out to have something as reactive as this, it's a lot of work. And this is his level structure. And I think it's a quite a well put diagram of how you have to visualize to yourself how this kind of interactive music works, where you have a couple of exit points and a couple of starting points for each of your music tracks, so that you can match up one sound or one music of another. And for myself, this reminded me a lot of the iMuse system that was developed by Michael Land and Peter McConnell all the way back, I think it was early 90s, late 80s at LucasArts. Lucasfilm games. For example, the Monkey Island 2 soundtrack. I don't know if you have played Monkey Island 2 recently, but if you play, give it a listen and how the music transitions over, because again, just as is nowadays with this system the case, it had different kinds of of transitions from one music to the next, so that it felt like you're not playing so much a game, but you're listening, you're watching a cartoon that you can interact, but the audio and the soundtrack is dynamically reacting to you, because you can't write something in advance. With games, you always have to be reacting to what the player is doing or how the things are unfolding. And he also, his company made also a system that does exactly this, that you can integrate into Unity or Unreal pretty well. It's a DLL, so for right now it's Windows based, but it's just, you call this and say the intensity or any other parameters you want to expose. The intensity of the fight music is 2, and then it transitions automatically, so you don't have to be concerned with this. So again, I found this very interesting. And then we have this this talk from this guy, and the gist of this talk was that you don't always have to go real big in your score, that you don't have to Bruckheimer it up, but sometimes there's more beauty in the more very subtle changes of something, and you don't have to always to shout. And he made this little game with us where he said, just close your eyes and just listen, and in your head just count how many tracks of different audio layers you have. For example, you would hear the hum of the beamer, then the people outside, someone would cough, someone would rustle, and so on. And in the end, you end up with, like, even if there is no sound at all or everything is just silent, you really just sharpen or heighten your awareness of that there is always something around you. And we just have to listen. And then we are almost at the end, I think. There we had this talk about what does a producer actually produce. And since I myself have a background, well, not only a background, I have a degree in project management. As you know, of course, for me, it was nothing new that a producer is the one who facilitates that everyone else can work, and they are usually in smaller teams the ones who pick up all the jobs that never get done. They usually get back when a publisher wants a screenshot or something. They are the ones who have a table of where the project is. I always joke that without a producer, you never know if your project is behind schedule. So you need a producer to have a schedule. When you look at the schedule, you know how far you're behind it. And it's just all those bookkeeping and keeping things on track and having an eye on everything else. that's not specifically in your job description. For example, a programmer programs, an artist does art, but how do those communicate? How do things stay on track and so on? So again, it's just what a producer does and why producers are very helpful. And even if you're a very small team, you wouldn't know how much a producer can speed things up. And in the end, there's just so many facets to the simple job of producer, and it's the most hated overall. Just after the publisher, because a producer is always the one who says, you need to be faster or be behind it, but in the end, they just want to keep things stay on track. And this talk, I don't know where it went there in the schedule, because my thumbnails are very messy there. And this was how to talk about with journalists about your game, because it doesn't help if you pen an email and that reads press statement, the best game of 2019 is out because it's a fight between good and evil, and then you just have this wall of text, because with journalists they are short on time. And this talk was very practical on what should go in your header line, in your subject line on your email, how to get interest, how to communicate what's interesting about your game, and how to talk to journalists, because you want what is special about your game also get across to the person who can spread your message if it's interesting. And of course, it never helps to have a good game in the end. And the final talk of the conference, and also of this chat here, was from the game designer from 11-Bit Studios. I don't know if you know them. They made games such as This War of Mine and recently Frostpunk. And this was a very interesting closing keynote about authorial intent in game mechanics, and what they can say and about you maybe something that you don't want to get across. For example, Indie Game, the movie, and a Polish documentary also about video games has the same subject matter but different kinds of perspective. And again, if I make a game about war and the Activision guys who make Call of Duty make a game about war, it will probably be a little bit different. So of course, the perspective you pick says a little something about what kind of story you want to tell. This is one thing, but with games we also have this big huge can of worms that is mechanics. How your mechanics can say something about or can transport a message that sometimes, if you're not aware of it, what it might tell about something. This is a little bit abstract, so she gave this example of Frostpunk. If you have played it, it's this huge city, the last city on Earth, and everything is just cold outside, and you have this one big furnace that keeps the city warm, and it just grows out radially from the center. And of course you have people who need to work outside in the cold, and the longer they work outside, chances are that they freeze their hands or fingers, and then they need to get amputated, and then they can't be part of the workforce. Of course, this, from a game design perspective, that makes sense. And at some point she said, yeah, then she wanted also to punish player for having people work out too long. So then she introduced that people with amputations who can't work anymore have a tendency to commit suicide. And then it wasn't really, you didn't really notice it when you were playing, a little bit maybe, and then you, as we all know, we just keep moving up the numbers. And then she looked at it, and it was like 50-50 chance that a person would commit suicide or not. And the message you tell is, yeah, people with disabilities have a 50-50 chance each day that they wake up and say, is today the day? And this is a horrible thing that that you get across, and it's just by mechanics when you're just too much focused on the actual gameplay. But at the same time, of course, what implications you make intentionally or not about the worldview of your game. And yeah, you never know on whose toes you step or how insensitive you are about certain topics or not. So I found this very fitting closing remark that gives you some food for thought. And afterwards there was something completely unexpected, and that was pizza for everyone. And you can see here the line of the people just queuing up for pizza. And I also got myself a slice of it, and then it was already quite late in the day, and I'm not sure if it comes across, but it was raining outside, and we had to walk half a kilometer back to the car, and we were soaked afterwards. And we still had to make a drive back to Salzburg that day. So yeah, it looked horrid. The weather was, just let me find it here. This was driving through Graz, and once we finally were there, it was half past 10 in the evening when we were finally on the highways to Salzburg, and it was just horrid driving. I mean, I was not sleepy at all. I was just completely exhausted, and for some reason it felt like it took longer than not. And even today, when I close my eyes, I see this. I just see the highway there, just some red lights somewhere from some other car, and this is what I still see. So this is why I thought I give this chat here, make it a little bit different than usual, because I'm not in a creative mood right now. I'm still in recovery mode. So let's have a look at the chat and see if I've lost all people. No, I still got 11 viewers, which is not as much as usual, but of course it has nothing to do with being creative or some let's pull up our sleeves and get into coding. So I completely understand this. But again, I just wanted to share my passion that I have for games, and I really enjoyed this conference. I think I've stressed it enough already. So yeah, again, let's have a look at the chat and switch over to Big Me there. Okay, I had a pee break, had to watch it at 1.5 speed to catch up. Can relate, yeah. Sorry, if you watch me at 1.5 speed, probably it's it's too much. Games getting out of control is one thing, but when the postmortem explodes, that you get the real achievement. Yeah, you know what? I'm not even joking about how long my postmortem is taking me. I can only say I don't want to take it into the grave with me. But next week things are dying down a little bit, so I get to work more on the postmortem, and then maybe have a stream where I can show you one finished matte painting, perhaps, that we started on the stream here. So this would be great. Hello Phil, I'm sorry I'm so late. Glad it could still... Yeah, it's great to have you back, Red Hermit. Again, I don't take it for granted that any of you just keep watches me rambling each Sunday here. So again, I'm very happy that not all of you just say, yeah, I can watch the archived stream later on, and then I'm here talking to one concurrent viewer, which is me in the other tab. So thank you. And a nice transition. Oh yes, thank you. I've worked way too much on this transition, but I love it so much that sometimes I hit it by accident. What is your main project in your life right now? My main project is catching up sleep, to be honest. No, I had my main project is of course work, where I'm employed, and then I'm also self-employed, where I do compositing work. And right now, the last 1.5 weeks, I had a kind of biggish compositing project where I had to compose some animations into some wearable devices, and it was a lot of tracking and integrating things and faking reflections and that stuff. So this occupied me a lot. And then the other project is that I started West of Loathing as a game, because I thought I just need something simple to relax. And look, it's a game with stick figures. How complicated can it be? And it's not complicated, but man, it's deep, it's complex, and I love it. The humor is great. So check out West of Loathing. I think it's in the sale right now. And this is a perfect example of looks can be deceiving, because it's a polished stick figure Western game, and it's funny. It reminds me from the humor a little bit of the Monkey Island series, which is great. And of course, yeah, the other big project in my life is the postmortem, which I keep currently working to pretty much anything that I do. I try to slip in a couple of hours each week. Then, of course, I have the video about the game dev days, because I want to make it a little video so that you don't have to watch 1.5 hours of me just rambling and trying to find English expressions for German words that come to my mind. And the other thing is that I started a video about shoot 'em ups, and especially how to make this 1990s, early 1990s shoot 'em up sound effect. And this is, that I tweeted recently, this is the edit I have so far. So the first, 3.5 minutes, oh, of course you can't see it because I'm there, now you can see it. So yeah, this is the whole of the edit. And the first 3.5 minutes there are pretty much done, and I'm happy because they are fun. And the rest here is the voiceover, which doesn't have any pictures to it. The good thing is I recorded them all. I have all the voiceovers done pretty much, all the animations, all the screen recordings recorded. Much redundant. Yeah, but I think I don't need to do some reshoot or anything. So this should hopefully, let's knock on wood, hopefully should be over soon, and I can finally post another video. Let's hope you don't get burned out. Yeah, I'm close to the border of burning out right now, but I think I need to, the next week, half of the next week, I will probably see if I can relax a little bit more and just play games instead of trying to make them. Second Rhombus question, Phil. Are you in for the next LD? Who else is planning to? Of course I'm in. I really hope that I can spend as much time as I want, because of the brother of my wife is having, I don't know the English term for this kind of family relation. Yeah, he is having a birthday, and I'm not quite sure if we're invited to the birthday party. And of course, if we are, I will go, because birthday parties are always fun, because there are two things: coffee and probably cake. And so I don't know how much time I will have for the next game, but I think I have this strange urge to make something with Twine again, and hopefully it will be something on the horror side. And as we all know, as soon as I have a plan to do something, it never works out. So I don't know what I will make, but I know that I'll be in for the next Ludum Dare, and I urge you to partake as well, because the more the merrier. Keep making games and invite people to making games, because in my opinion it's the greatest art form there is. Brother-in-law, thank you. Yeah, this brother-in-law, this makes sense. It sounds familiar to me. Okay, I just see how many of you already are devoting themselves to say, yeah, they will be in the LD Jam as well. And right, Rumble says October is 100% horror because it's the spooky month because of Old Hallows Eve. No, it's All Hallows Eve, Halloween. And I wanted to do something fun, horror style mystery for Halloween, but I don't have a plan yet. And yeah, I'm close to being burned out at the moment, so I see if I can think of something mid to late September and then surprise you with probably nothing. Okay, so again, sorry for the delay with starting the stream. Thanks for everyone who is still there. It's 12 concurrent viewers. Again, this is a high watermark for this late in a stream where I'm just talking about stuff that I heard people talk about for the past 2 days. So again, Unicorn, be sure to drink your water. Thank you so much for watching me ramble, and be sure to check out Game Dev Days Graz at YouTube. And maybe if you're living close to Austria or for some reason should be there, I think next year this event will also happen, probably around starting of September, which is great because it's not fall yet, but it's not as hot that you feel like you're missing great warm weather outside when you're just sitting in there playing games and talking about games and listening to people talk about games for 2 days. So yeah, again, thank you so much. Let's have a last look at the chat that I'm not missing anything. Oh, thanks again for sharing your experience. Well, thank you. And to those of you who congratulated me to my birthday and even gave me some presents, you know who you are. Thank you so much. And I'm very much looking forward to playing even more games than making, because you also got, I mean, it's like with authors, right? You read to be able to write, and you need to play to be able to make games. Preferably pixely platformers with crafting and roguelike elements. So again, thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of the Sunday. Depends on where you are. It's not a lot, but still. And probably see you next Sunday. So let's try this transition once again. And thank you so much again.